Warning, this video may contain content that may not be suitable for children or anyone else that is easily offended. Strong language, graphic content, nudity, bad jokes, and a possible idiot, aka myself, may be featured in the following clip. Viewer discretion is advised. Channel is not responsible for any damages that you receive watching this video.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Zems, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we're gonna react to the most feared girl in Mexico, mature audience onlys. For those of my Spanish speakers, si recomienda la discreción de los espectadores. Yo, we are about to dive into something magnificent, something scary, something spooky, something strange, dark, and mysterious. If you guys are new to the first time on Reprisalzems, and welcome to the Crow's Nest. But for now, let's get it. Let's go!
This story has a very graphic ending, so viewer discretion is advised.
But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place, because that's all we do. We upload once or twice every week. Let's
If
go!
that's of interest to you, please put a single metal fork in the left button microwave, set it for 99 minutes, hit start, and then leave. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Before we get into today's story, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Back in 2015, when I was still in the military and was not on YouTube yet,
Look at this handsome human being!
I fell into a very deep depression. I was mad all the time, I was isolating myself, I was basically self-destructing. And eventually, after my family encouraged me to do so, I did go out and get help. I sought out a therapist, and honestly, looking back, I think that decision saved my life. So when BetterHelp, which is a very highly reviewed online therapy platform, reached out to me and asked if we could partner, I immediately said yes, because I know therapy works.
It does.
For the last couple of months, I've been using their platform, and it's great. It's easy to use, it's affordable, all their therapists are licensed and accredited, but in my opinion, the best and most unique aspect of BetterHelp is that it's all online. Back in 2015, I almost didn't seek out a therapist because I was so concerned about physically walking into the therapist's office and having someone who knows me see me walking in and judging me. But with BetterHelp, you can get the help you need from the comfort of your home and in total anonymity. Sign up is super easy. You just fill out a questionnaire, and then right away, a therapist gets in touch with you, and they set up a time to talk to you within 48 hours. And if you want to change your therapist at any time, it's free and very easy to do. So if you think talking to someone could benefit you like it benefited me, then go to betterhelp.com/MrBallin. That's better, H-E-L-P. And if you sign up using the Mr. Ballin link in the description, you'll get 10% off your first month. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Yeah, that's true, man. I'm glad he said that because depression is the thing. I think I told you guys too, I had depression, bro. So I was glad that he was able to partner up with somebody that can reach out and help those that may need it, because some people are not comfortable, like he said, walking in and having somebody see you and think, because people think getting help, it means something's wrong with you, like your mental is not stable or something, but it's natural, it's normal, and that's some things that we don't talk about as human beings, is being depressed. Like, oh, suck it up, you have a lot going for you, so you have no reason to be sad. Back in my day, cool, like you're not me, you know what I'm saying? You don't take the same things that I take, you don't react the same way, you don't have the same emotions as me, so don't tell me what I'm reacting to is not worth reacting to. You get what I'm saying? So do what's best for you guys. If you need the help, go get it. I'll support you, and I'm pretty sure anyone that loves you will support you to do the same way. But for now, just a Mr. Ballin dance. Let's go. Come here, Harris. Get the Mr. Ballin dance too. You want some? All right, you missed it. It's too late. Don't even come over here. I love you though. The cave. Warning, disturbing images and statements, viewer discretion is advised.
The Sierra Madre Oriental is a major mountain range that starts on the southern border of Texas and Mexico and cuts 700 miles south through the northeastern section of Mexico. About halfway down this mountain range on the eastern face lies a series of caves, and situated below these caves at the foot of the mountains are several small villages that are very isolated, and they're populated primarily with illiterate poor farmers.
Red flag.
One night back in May of 1963, a 14-year-old boy named Sebastian Guerrero, who lived in one of these small isolated villages, decided to go for a walk up in the mountains, and he wanted to go explore the different caves. Now, this was something he did fairly regularly because there was a local rumor that there was actually hidden treasure in these different caves. Now, it's unclear if Sebastian literally believed that or if that was just kind of an excuse to go have a look around himself. But regardless, he headed out of his house and he began walking up the mountain towards these caves. The entrance to these these caves were a couple hundred feet up the mountainside, and then each of the various entrances, which ranged in size from fairly small to enormous, were spread out a couple of miles in each direction. So Sebastian starts walking up the mountain towards the first entrance he can see. It's dark outside, he's got no flashlight, he's just walking up, and as he's walking, he notices off to his right, fairly far away from where he was, there was light coming out of one of the cave entrances.
Cartel.
And he had never recalled seeing light coming out of any of these caves. Nobody ever went in these caves, especially not at night. And so his interest was piqued, and he decided he would kind of abandon his original plan to just kind of look around near his village, and he would actually walk all the way over to that lit up cave and see what was going on. So he turned right and began kind of walking uphill at an angle in the direction of this lit up cave. And so as he's walking, he's getting farther and farther away from the village where he lives, and he's starting to hear sounds coming out of this lit up cave entrance. It sounds like a person potentially, either they're laughing or they're screaming. He doesn't really know. He's thinking, maybe someone's having a party inside one of these caves. He has no idea. But after he gets maybe 200 or 300 feet away from this entrance, he realizes it's definitely a person, and they're definitely screaming. And it does not sound like they're screaming out of joy. It sounds...
If they're not screaming out of joy, boy, that's not a party that I would like to attend. And on top of that, the first thing I said, red flag, multiple cave entrances. We all know caves is either going to get you stuck, you're going to get clapped by something, or it's going to collapse on top of you. It's always something to do with caves. I don't trust caves. And cartels and stuff in Mexico, bro, it's not a part of all Mexico. Mexico's a beautiful place, but if I hear screams, bro, hell to the no, bro. Unless Slipknot's performing on the other side of them hills, bro, I'm not trying to be there. That's why you got an MYB, bro. Mind your business. Mind your business, bro. Because sometimes I've seen it all. I even seen one time, it was back in the day, my mom stepped in. I was younger. My mom stepped in to try to help some lady because the dude was like beating her up and stuff. Like he was beating her up pretty bad, man. And she told my mom to get away from her. She don't need her help. And my mom was shocked. Like you just like that. Some people are into that. I'm pretty sure she probably got back with him after that too. It's crazy, bro. Domestic violence is a scary place to be. Although it's not having to do with this story, but it has to do with mind your business, bro. Just call the police, mind your business, say what you saw and keep it pushing, bro. Because if he's screaming, I don't want to be the second one screaming, bro.
Sounds like they're screaming because they're scared or they're in pain. And as he's getting closer and closer and closer to this cave, his anxiety is starting to ramp up because he's really starting to be frightened by what he's hearing, and he's starting to realize there's more than one person inside of this cave. In addition to the person that is screaming out, there also sounds to be a large contingent of other people that are either singing in unison or chanting in unison, but some group of people are doing something in unison while some other person is screaming out. And so he's really starting to get nervous about this cave, but he just can't help feeling curious about what was going on. And so he just continued walking until he was maybe 10 feet away from the entrance to this cave, and he plopped down behind a rock. And so he's not really sure if it's a good idea to look. He doesn't want to be spotted by whoever is in there, but finally he kind of works up the courage. He takes a deep breath and slips out from behind the rock, and he goes right to the edge of this big opening, maybe 10 foot across opening, and he peeks his head right around the edge of the opening, and he looks inside, and what he sees causes him to just freeze in terror. Then his survival instincts just kick in, and he turns and he starts running down the mountain away from this cave. He has no idea if he's been spotted or not, but he's sensing that someone could be chasing him, and so he is just running as if his life depended on it. And he would not run back to his village. Instead, he would run nearly 10 miles to the nearest police station. And when he gets there, he busts through the front doors and he's totally hysterical. He's drenched in sweat, and the police officers are totally caught off guard. And so they're trying to tell him to calm down. And so Sebastian finally would kind of compose himself, but then he just was not able to describe what he had seen inside of this cave. Whatever he had seen, he knew it was bad, but the words were just escaping him. And so the way he described it to police was he basically thought he saw vampires. And as soon as he began describing vampires to the police, they're thinking to themselves, okay, I don't know what's going on with this kid, but this just cannot be serious. And so they consoled him and kind of calmed him down and said, look, kid, I don't know what you're talking about. If there's any news that comes out of something happening in the cave that's bad, I'm sure we'll hear about it and we'll follow up. But for now, we're just going to bring you back to your village. And so at this, Sebastian was really...
Don't take me back to my village, bro. On top of that, do you know how scared you gotta be to run 10 miles, bro? Jason don't even chase people that far, bro. Bruh, this kid needs a scholarship. 10 miles, bro. He ran up downhill, hit the streets, and kept running. He ran 10 miles. He ran past his home, bro, to the police station. And that's more than what most people do when they got a phone right next to them. They don't even call the police. They don't even think about calling the police. This dude ran. Like, usually you run so far, you're like, dang, I wonder if anybody's behind me. He ran nonstop to get help, bro.
Really frustrated, and he was kind of pleading with the police like, no, you gotta take me seriously. There's something bad happening in this cave. Someone could be hurt. Someone could be dying. I don't know, but you gotta go to this cave. You gotta go see what's going on. But the police at this point, they're just not really interested. And so they ultimately do just drive him back to his village. And so he goes back into his home, the police go back to their station, and everyone just kind of goes to bed for the night. The next day, when Sebastian wakes up, he just can't shake what he saw inside of that cave. And so he would once again run back to the police station. And when he got there, he began pleading with the police, like, you gotta go see what's inside of this cave. I'm telling you, there's something awful in there. And this time, one of the police officers, his name was Luis Martinez, he would say, okay, kid, bring me to this cave and I'll have a look around. And so Luis and Sebastian, who was very grateful, they left the police station, they hopped in a police car, and they took off. And then later on in the day, the other police officers, who were not really paying attention to this cave thing, they realized that Luis and the boy had not returned yet, and Luis had not checked in via his radio. And so at some point in the afternoon that day, the other officers began calling out to Luis. They began calling him on his radio and trying to figure out what's going on, but he wasn't responding. And so the police thought that was odd, but they thought, you know what, I'm sure he'll be back soon. There's got to be an explanation for this. But the rest of the day would go by without Luis reaching out to them, and he didn't return with the boy. And so by that evening, the other officers were genuinely concerned that, something bad had happened to their colleague. And so they tried calling Luis a few more times on the radio. It didn't work. And so the officers, they made their way over to Sebastian's village, and they found Sebastian's family, believing that, maybe the boy was back and he could give some insight into where Luis went. But when they talked to Sebastian's family, they would say, hey, he's not back yet either. And so both Sebastian and Luis at this point have not talked to anyone all day, and they are missing. And so the police at this point, they realize this is an emergency. They need to figure out where these two went. And so they were kind of understaffed. And so they contacted the Mexican army, and they explained, we're missing one of our colleagues. We're missing a child from this village. And so the Mexican army would actually send out a military unit to assist them in going and finding these two people. And
he should have did that in the first place, bro. Like, what police station? Like, well, we haven't heard from them. They haven't returned in an hour and a half. Everything's okay. I'm not going to call him on the radio. He's not answering the radio. He probably lost signal. 2 hours passed by. Yeah, it should be like, damn, bro, send another unit. What's taking y'all so long? I'll tell you guys, if I tell you I'm going to call you in an hour and I don't call you back in an hour, if I tell you I'm going somewhere and I don't return and start call for help, bro. Because I would give you directions. I would say I'm not okay. Send help, bro. Send
They
newts.
show up later that night, and the police and the Mexican army, they head out to where this cave was. And when they saw what was inside the cave, it would shock the world. To understand what was found inside of this cave, we need to go back 6 months to December of 1962.
Okay.
That month, two brothers, Santos and Cayetano Hernandez, who made their living basically traveling around Mexico, stealing from people and swindling people, they decided they were going to pull off their biggest heist yet. They were going to rip off an entire town. Their plan was to go into a small, fairly isolated village that was populated primarily with poor and illiterate people, and they would go in there and they would convince the villagers that they, the brothers, were actually prophets of an exiled Incan god. And if these villagers did everything they said, they would make them rich. And so the village the brothers identified as their target was a place called La Yerba Buena, which was located right at the foot of the Sierra Madre Oriental, right below where that cave was that Luis and Sebastian went to investigate. And La Yerba Buena was exactly what the brothers were looking for. It was home to only about 20 families that were all very poor and illiterate, and they were very suggestible. And so right before the new year, the Hernandez brothers strolled into La Yerba Buena, and they put on this very dramatic show explaining how they were the prophets of the Incan god. And these two brothers, they were very charismatic and they were excellent salesmen. And so they really sold the lie. And these villagers, who were very vulnerable and cut off really from the rest of the world, they believed them. They thought this was their big break. They're going to be rich. We just have to do whatever they say. And so almost immediately, the villagers effectively became the Hernandez brothers' slaves. They would give them anything they wanted and do anything they wanted. But after a couple of months of this, some of the villagers started to be frustrated with the Hernandez brothers, the prophets, because it seemed like they were not really working towards making the villagers rich.
No results.
Instead, it just seemed like they were horribly mistreating the villagers. And it just didn't feel like this was a relationship that was benefiting the villagers. And so when this sentiment began to kind of make its way around the 70-ish people who lived in La Yerba Buena, the brothers picked up on it, and they could have, at that point, just kind of abandoned their gig. At this point, you know, they've robbed the town dry. There's nothing left for them to give to the brothers.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the brothers decide instead to salvage their operation. And so the brothers, they leave the village and they go to a city that's relatively close by, and they recruit this young woman named Magdalena Solis. She was a prostitute, and they tell her, hey, you know, we have this con we're doing in La Yerba Buena where we're pretending to be prophets of this Incan god, and they're starting not to believe our lie, and so we need you, if you're willing, to come with us and pretend to be an actual Incan goddess.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. That's crazy how people can like hoodwink and bamboozle people out of their money. Like, I feel bad even if it's like a 50 cent or a quarter. Like, I don't know how people have it. It's just like, I guess it's just that survival instinct, or, you know, they just don't want to work for it, or you're just plain evil. I don't know. Some people say they do it because they can't find work, or it was the last straw and they couldn't, you know, make money for themselves. But I mean, I feel like there's always another way. Even if you feel like you're at your lowest, that there is nothing else you can do, I feel like there's always something that you can do to get yourself going back in the right direction. But that's just my opinion. You know, I don't live your life. I don't know what you've been through, but that's just my opinion. I feel like once you start targeting other people and have to harm people to make it in life, then I feel like you've went down the wrong direction. You can do more, man. If you have the energy and stuff to buy guns and go out and rob people and put all them days into making people believe you're something that you're not, then you can use that time to fill out more job applications. You can use that time to travel to another state and try to get hired somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? People like to be stagnant. They want to blame everybody that's around. I'll stutter a lot, sorry. They like to blame everyone that's around instead of taking responsibility for their own actions.
And so when you show up, they'll know that we were serious, that we have a direct line to the Incan gods and goddesses, and they'll believe us again, and they'll fall back in line. And so Magdalena, she likes the idea of participating in this con, and so she agrees to do it in exchange for some money. And so she, along with the Hernandez brothers and Magdalena's brother, his name was Eliezer, and he functioned as her pimp, those four people, they went back to Yerba Buena, and when they got there, the Hernandez brothers snuck Magdalena past all the villagers up to that cave up in the mountains, and they put her in the back of the cave. They kind of hid her behind some rocks, and they dressed her up in an Incan goddess costume. And then once she was in there, the brothers went back down to the village, and they rounded all the villagers up and said, come on, let's go up to the cave. We have a special ceremony for you. And so the villagers made their way up to this cave, and once they were all inside, the Hernandez brothers used some basic magic tricks and created basically a smoke screen. Once they had this smoke screen kind of billowing in the back of the cave, they secretly signaled to Magdalena, who was behind the smoke screen, and she knew that was her cue, and she leapt through the smoke and she presented herself to the villagers for the first time, and she declared herself to be a reincarnated Incan goddess. And if you don't do what I tell you to do, I'm going to kill you. And so the message she was sending to the villagers was so intense, they completely believed that this was an Incan goddess, and therefore this was not a ruse. The brothers were not lying to them. This was all very real. There's a real goddess in front of us. And so they immediately fell right back in line. The plan worked exactly as the brothers wanted it to. However, there was an element of their plan they could not possibly have accounted for. And that was what Magdalena did next. Even though Magdalena was fully aware that what she was getting herself into was an act, it was a con, it was not real. Despite that, as soon as she jumped through the smoke and was standing in front of the villagers for the first time and saw the looks on these people's faces as they stared up at her, and she saw their reverence for her, it had this profound impact on her. This is a woman who's never had control in her life. She's been a prostitute since a young age, and here she is, the most powerful person in the room, and it's not even close.
I would have checked the script, because I don't remember them saying to Sarah to say all that extra behind the scene, and the director director's cut type shit she was saying. This crazy, bruh. No, she's not in control. I mean, you are in control. If you're a prostitute, are you not? I mean, you're in control of your body. You're in control of what customer you go to. So you've been in control. You just want power. I don't think it's necessarily control. You just want to rule over people. I feel like you get more followers when you're respected more than feared. That's just me. People are doing it. I'd rather have people that want to do stuff with for me because they want to than they just doing it because they're scared of me. I don't know. That's just how I feel though.
And it got to her head. And so when she left the cave that night, she literally believed she was a reincarnated Incan goddess, and she was not a merciful one. Within the first few days of her stay at La Yerba Buena, Magdalena used threats of violence on the villagers to completely take over the village. She very easily supplanted the Hernandez brothers at the top of the power structure. Now, the Hernandez brothers probably were quite surprised to see this happen because they were expecting Magdalena to play more of a prop role to keep them in power, not the other way around. But ultimately, they kind of just went along with it because through Magdalena's control over the villagers, they were able to continue to exploit the villagers. And so they were getting what they wanted out of this relationship. Within a few weeks of being in La Yerba Buena, Magdalena was not only abusing every villager in every horrible way imaginable, she also was becoming completely delusional. She convinced herself that in order to survive, she needed to start drinking blood. And so she demanded all the villagers provide her with blood. And so in fear of retribution, the villagers began slaughtering all of their farm animals and their own pets so Magdalena could drink their blood. For weeks and weeks and weeks, the horrible abuse Magdalena would dole out on the villagers would continue, and these blood rituals would continue. And then finally, sometime in April, 2 of the villagers decided, you know what, I've had enough. I don't believe Magdalena is actually an Incan goddess. I don't believe the Hernandez brothers are actually prophets. I think this is all a scam. And so they decided the way they would handle this is they were just going to flee the village. Now, somehow their plans to run away got out, and the Hernandez brothers found out about it, and they, in turn, told Magdalena about it, and when she heard the news, she immediately told everyone in the village to make their way up to the cave for a special ceremony. So all the villagers, including the 2 people that were planning on running away, they made their way up to the cave, and once everyone was inside, Magdalena walked to the front of the group, and she pointed at the 2 dissenters, the 2 people that were planning on running, and she demanded that the rest of the villagers kill them. And on the spot, all of the other villagers jumped on top of the 2 dissenters and they lynched them. They beat them to death in the cave. And then after these 2 people have been killed, Magdalena orders their bodies be strung up on these 2 pikes she had set up in the back of the cave because she knew what she was going to be doing up in this cave. And so after these 2 bodies were strung up on these pikes, Magdalena grabs a chalice and she walks over to these 2 bodies and she presses the chalice up against their bodies where they're bleeding from, and she fills it up and then she drinks from the chalice. And at this point, everything changed. Suddenly, Magdalena understood that it wasn't good enough to just be drinking animal blood. That was not enough to keep her, a goddess, alive. She now could only consume human blood.
Yep, right up until she get herpes. Yep, you're a queen. As soon as that bum appear, they're definitely gonna see through that because you're supposed to be immortal. You're supposed to be not be able to get sick, all that stuff, bro. Come on, bro. You about to get herpes trying to drink people's blood, bro. And on top of that, like, they some hoes, bro. Whoever snitched on them too, bro. Y'all some hoes, bro. That's why you can't tell everybody your plan, bro. I'd have been like, yeah, I'll be up there in a minute. Boy, I took off running. You will have to catch me. And the fact that they didn't even hesitate lets you know their dedication to this lady, bro. Like, I would have looked like, kill them? Why would I kill them? I couldn't do it. You can't be smart when everybody else is misled. You can't trust them because they can't think for themselves. The ones that can think for themselves will get killed because they're going to taint the rest of the group. It's going to cause the group to turn on them. You just have to just move in silence and get out of there and just tell the police or tell somebody what's going on and get them up out of there. They found this lady on the street throwing it back, bro, and then all of a sudden she's drinking human blood and thinking that she's a... That's probably what a dude thought they was vampires, bro. They was up there drinking blood and bouncing booty holes.
So for the next several weeks, periodically, Magdalena would order everyone in the village to go back up to the cave for a blood ritual, which they all knew what this entailed. This no longer had anything to do with animals. This was human blood rituals. She would order them up, and they would have no idea who was going to be the sacrifice. And so all these people that get inside this dark cave, and then Magdalena shows up, and she stands in front of them, and after kind of looking them over, she identifies her next sacrifice, and out of fear, the other villagers, who were the friends and family of the victim, would launch themselves on top of the chosen sacrifice and lynch them in the cave. And then afterwards, their body would be strung up on one of the pikes, and Magdalena would walk over with her chalice. She would fill it with blood, and she would drink it. And so this would go on and on for several weeks. And one of the most distressing aspects of these human sacrifices is that as she did more and more and more of them, Magdalena got it in her head that beating the sacrifice to death before consuming their blood was spoiling the blood in some way. And so what she began doing was she would have the other villagers beat the sacrifice into submission, and then she would have the sacrifice strung up to one of the pikes while they were still alive, and then she would carve their heart out while they were alive, and then she would drink their blood. So in May of 1963, when Sebastian, the 14-year-old boy, when he poked his head around and looked into that cave, he watched one of these sacrifices having their heart cut out, and he didn't know what to make of it, and so he ran to the police. And then the next day, he and the police officer, Luis Martinez, they would go back to the cave, and Magdalena and her cult would spot them, capture them, and drag them both into the cave, and both of them would be ritualistically sacrificed. They would have their hearts cut out, and Magdalena would drink their blood. When the police and army arrived in La Yerba Buena, it was a ghost town because all of the villagers had been ordered up to the cave, where they had barricaded themselves inside with weapons, because Magdalena probably knew there was going to be a big police response because one of their officers has gone missing out here. They're bound to be found out. And so when the police and the army reach the cave, there's this big shootout with all of the villagers. And during the shootout, the majority of the villagers are killed. Also, the Hernandez brothers, they're also killed in the shootout. And then after the shootout stopped, the police and the army would go into this cave, and they would discover the pikes, the bloody pikes that are in the back of the cave, with bits of human remains all over the ground. And then they would leave the cave, and they would search the town, and they would find the remains of Luis and Sebastian outside a particular shack. And then inside the shack was Magdalena and her brother Eliezer. They were still alive. They were trying to hide from the authorities.
Don't hide now.
And so they would be arrested. It's believed Magdalena sacrificed and drank the blood of at least 15 of the villagers over a 6-week period.
6 weeks?
However, the only remains to be positively identified were Luis Martinez and Sebastian Guerrero. Ultimately, Magdalena and her brother Eliezer were sentenced to 50 years in prison, and all of the surviving villagers who participated in these sacrifices or who participated in the shootout with police and the army, they were given 30 years in prison. Amazingly, none of the villagers ever testified against Magdalena or her brother, despite the fact they were almost certainly offered reduced sentences in exchange for their testimony. Clearly, they were more terrified of the Incan goddess than they were terrified of the prospect of 30 years in prison.
50 years? Bruh. How the hell they don't talk about her? They be talking about Aileen Worsen, the worst serial killer. And bro, this lady killed 15 people in 6 weeks, bro, and drank their blood. And I haven't heard of this lady, bro. This is disturbing because you always hear about Ted Bundy, and you got people like this. You turned a prostitute into a vampire, bro. That's what happened. Everybody can't have that taste of power because stuff like this is gonna happen, bro. That's insane. Kids too. Parents was sacrificing their kids, like, here, take them. I feel sorry for the police officer because he was the only one that went up there and helped him, bro. So God bless him and that little boy that went up there and tried to do it, bro. He should have pulled his gun and started letting off rounds, bro. I thought they was poor. Where they get Glocks and stuff from? Oh, it wasn't Glocks. I probably put no extra, but where they get guns and stuff from, bro? I thought they was poor and needed money. They got weapons. Where y'all get guns from?
Although the exact date of when this happened is not known, Magdalena would eventually die behind bars. So that's going to do it, guys. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please put a single metal fork in the like button's microwave, set it for 99 minutes, hit start, and then leave. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly 1 or 2 video uploads. We are now selling merchandise like flannels and hats and sweatshirts and all sorts of stuff. If you're interested, go to shopmrballin.com. If you want to learn about upcoming deals and promotions for our shop, go to our shop's Instagram page. The username is shopmrballin. Ballin. If you want to get in touch with me, you can direct message me on Instagram or on Twitter. My username for both platforms is the same. It's just Mr. Ballin. I also have a ton of content over on TikTok where my username is also Mr. Ballin. We also have a second YouTube channel just called Mr. Ballin Shorts, where we post random short videos and lost episodes. We also have a Facebook page just called Mr. Ballin, where we post condensed versions of the longer episodes you see on YouTube. If you have a story suggestion, please submit it to our subreddit just called Mr. Ballin. It's linked in the description below. So whether I see you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, or some combination, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.
Yo, but dang, man. Let me know down in the comment section if you heard about this lady, bro. She was dangerous in Mexico. This video, viewer discretion is advised from my Español speaker. Si recomienda la discreción de los espectadores. Man, hit that like button, subscribe button, support your boy. This video is by Mr. Ball, so you guys have a review. Subscribe to my script box. Click on the link and watch the video in entirety because I was pausing and stopping and talking through the whole thing. If you guys are checking out my Reprisalzems, and welcome to the Crow's Nest. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Stay out of caves, stay away from prostitutes, and stay away from anybody saying they're a Tika guy, whatever they want to say, bro.